What if Jaime Lannister was never released? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The northern column marches away from the twins, their banners fluttering in the crisp autumn wind as they leave from a terse but largely uneventful wedding. Among them, Jaime Lannister rides in their midst, bound and under heavy guard. The Freys remain in their castle, cowed by the presence of the northern army and the captivity of Jaime Lannister's presence. With the Kingslayer as leverage, the threat of Tywin Lannister's wrath is held at bay. Despite the reversals they've suffered, the fall of Winterfell, the fracturing of their alliances, the Northerners remain defiant. But even still, there are issues as many grumble about keeping him alive, while so many of their friends lay dead and the war looks grim. But Jaime is the least of their concerns, as Robb's mind has already turned to his next task, recapturing Moat Cailin. The host regroups at the neck, bolstered by reinforcements from the Crannogmen, who know the swamps as well as wolves know the forest. Ahead looms Moat Cailin, its broken towers casting jagged shadows over the marshes. The Ironborn hold the ancient fortress, but their defenses are stretched thin. They underestimate the North's cunning and the Crannogmen's ruthlessness. A small force of northern men led by Roose Bolton creep north, using Crannogmen to guide them through the swamp. Robb, meanwhile, gathers his forces south to attack. The Crannogmen strike first, emerging silently from the swamps under the cover of darkness. Poisoned arrows fly from the reeds, picking off Ironborn sentries one by one. Traps spring into the muddy waters, swallowing patrols whole. Fear spreads like wildfire through the garrison, who pull back just as Robb marches forward, leading his men with scaling ladders. Against this attack, the Ironborn are ready, firing arrows down at them and dropping stones at their attackers. Robb stands at the head, covered by the shields of his battle guard. A few lucky Northmen gain the towers and face the Ironborn invaders atop the wall, axes and swords meeting against shields and armor as they fight for control of the few solidified areas. This pulls the small garrison towards the southern section, freeing the north to attack. The Crannogmen sabotage the gates, opening them just as Roose's men press their charge. Caught between the advancing Northerners and the swamp-born assassins, the Ironborn fall in droves. By dawn, the fortress is stark once more, its ancient stones soaked in Ironborn blood. The victory at Moat Cailin revitalizes the northern cause. Robb surveys the battlefield from the crumbling ramparts, the weight of recent defeats lifting, if only for a moment. With the fortress secured, he now holds the gateway to the north. As his troops advance up the neck, he already sends word ahead of their arrival. The remaining castles held by the Ironborn are even easier targets. The garrisons are small, and they are facing the very Northmen who once held them. Torrens Square, Deepwood Motte, and the Stony Shore all fall in quick succession. The last of these is Winterfell, which is in ruin but remains the northern capital. Robb wastes no time starting to restore and repair the castle back to its proper state. He puts his men working day and night to fix the walls, replace ruined buildings, and clear out the ruins. But as he works, a raven comes from the wall, calling for help from a wildling army that has placed them under siege. Although wary from battle, the report paints a grim picture, and the Night's Watch have long been allies of the North. Whether or not it affects the war, Robb knows he must respond. He gathers a force of volunteers and rides to the wall to confront them. The air is sharp and frigid as Robb leads his men toward Castle Black. Smoke drifts lazily from the wall's parapets, and the signs of battle are fresh. Bodies litter the snow, most clad in black, with others bearing crude leathers and the tattered hides of wildlings. Robb halts his horse just outside the gates, scanning the scene. His bannermen, still wary from their battles, murmur among themselves.
Too late. The fight's over. Beware of the savages. They could be rampaging across the north.
You best take a closer look, Lord Umber. The Dreadfort ruler points at Castle Black as a column of disciplined men marches out, soldiers clad in gleaming armor. Robb's eyes widen as he sees their banners snapping in the wind. The fiery heart of the Lord of Light was emblazoned on crimson cloth.
Stannis.
The king in question rides at the front of his column, haggard and gaunt, but his head held high. Behind him strides his hand, Sir Davos Seaworth at his side. Behind them, the grim-eyed man of the Night's Watch, including Jon Snow, who leads a captive Mance Raider.
Robb Stark, I see the North does not abandon the Watch in their hour of need.
And I see the South hasn't forgotten us entirely. You came for the war.
My people can abandon me, but I will not abandon my people. I heard the pleas of the Watch. Ignoring their plight is folly. I came to do my duty when others would not. Although I'm glad to see I'm not the only one who values their duty.
You've won the battle then?
We have. The wildling host is scattered. Their king is in chains, along with how many others the wall holds. For now. But this war does not end here. The South remains in chaos, and I mean to press my claim. To do that, I need men. Soldiers who remember their oaths.
You asked the North to march south. We've bled enough, my lord, and we will not kneel.
Are all Northmen as stubborn as you? Damn you, Starks. Very well. If you shall not kneel, then I ask for an alliance. The North has its grievances, and I do not deny their validity. But you will gain nothing if the Lannisters continue to rule from King's Landing.
An alliance, then. If you would have our swords, you must also look north. My men are depleted, but these wildlings, from what the letters told me, their numbers seem endless. The wildlings have strong warriors among them, if they can be convinced to fight.
The Northern Lords all erupt in chaos, shouting over one another to have their voices heard. Most voice their displeasure at this idea, but Robb assures them that most wildling warriors will be marching south soon enough. At this, a figure laughs, a captured wildling. Mance Raider, the king beyond the wall, stares boldly at Robb and Stannis.
Convinced to fight? You don't understand my people. We didn't come here to raid your castles or plunder your lands. We came to live. The dead are coming, and this wall stands between us and them. Then take the land you need. The gift belongs to the North, but we have no use for it if it strengthens our enemies. Settle your people there. In return, I ask only for your warriors, not as vassals, but as free men, paid for their service. You'd pay wildlings to fight your battles. You think that's all it'll take? You fought for your land once. Why not do so again? If the dead are coming, you'll need more than the wall to stop them. Fight with us, and we'll fight for you. Besides, the South is like nothing you've ever seen. It's rich, green, and warm. The journey alone is adventure enough. If not, there's loot aplenty for every free folk to fatten their purse while they settle down. Now this one, he knows how to speak like a wildling. Very well. I'll speak to my people.
Mance departs. Stannis goes to overseeing the wildling forces, leaving Robb to talk to Jon Snow.
Jon, it's great to see you. A lot has happened since you took the Black. I've heard. Maester Aemon has kept me abreast of all happenings. I'm sorry about your father. Our father. He was a great man, and we will avenge him. Speaking of which, Jon, I'd name you my heir to the North until I have a son.
The bastard of Winterfell is overwhelmed by this decision, touched by the trust his brother has in him. All his life, he's wished to be seen as a true Stark. But as he looks over at the wall and how close they were to falling, he politely declines.
Thank you, Robb, but my place is here. I've taken an oath to the Night's Watch. Father would want me to uphold my duty and honor as a Stark.
Robb then suggests that he legitimizes Jon and helps him organize the defenses as his heir rather than simply a black brother. That way, he can also work with the Northern Lords. This is highly unprecedented for the Night's Watch, who are supposed to be neutral in the conflicts of man, something impossible when their Lord Commander is also the Prince of the North. Many of the older men quietly grumble about this, threatening to boycott Jon's election. Robb assures them that it is a necessary measure with the threat of the White Walkers. This will allow them to better coordinate and remind them that these are unprecedented times. He also suggests that once the Night Watch stabilizes, Jon Snow could step down and take his place at Winterfell, allowing them to elect someone else. This and the promise of additional men placates the Watch for now. With the North secured, Robb invites Jenny to live in Winterfell with him, along with her family. There he learns some important news from the South. Joffrey Baratheon dies at his wedding, and his sister Sansa is the primary suspect, along with Tyrion Lannister. This throws the Lannisters into chaos and leaves them temporarily paralyzed as they try to deal with that. The Starks and Baratheons, meanwhile, have a golden opportunity to strike. Robb, however, uses this time to consolidate his hold on the North. As he gathers wildlings, he allows them to settle in the Gift, letting them remain under the rule of their chieftains. Others are allowed to venture to different northern houses as laborers and guards in exchange for pay. They are free to farm the land and settle as they see fit, but their condition is that any wildlings caught raiding will be punished, however their captors see fit. The more war-hungry wildlings are invited to serve in the armies of Stannis and Robb. While tensions remain, Jon and the Night's Watch help keep watch over them, capturing any rule breakers. With thousands of free folk setting up in the north, this also gives them a surge in manpower, allowing Robb to rebuild his army. But they aren't the only ones who do this. Lord Manderly has been building a navy and army since the start of the war, and offers these troops to serve Robb. But more importantly, he comes bearing information as he reveals it was the bastard of House Bolton who kidnapped Lady Hornwood and sacked Winterfell, not the Ironborn garrison. This allows Robb to demand Ramsay's head, which Lord Bolton is happy to provide, along with some apologies, returning the Hornwood lands and some gold. Meanwhile, the Hornwood land is granted to Tormund Giantsbane to neutralize Roos's influence by keeping him surrounded by enemies. Robb also sends word to the River Lords, telling them of their alliance with Stannis and his army and his plans to march south. The disciplined ranks of his southern soldiers are bolstered by wildlings clad in fur, bronze, and leather, led by Mance Rayder. But they don't come alone. Behind them are ranks of towering giants, their immense strides shaking the earth, carrying massive weapons carved from tree trunks. The sight of this army spreads like wildfire through the Riverlands. Many river lords who had once wavered in their alliance flock to his banners. Lords such as Tytos Blackwood, Jason Mallister, and Carl Vance offer their swords. Even old Walder Frey is cowed by the sight of giants to commit some soldiers. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, chaos reigns. The trial of Tyrion Lannister grips the city, with accusations of regicide hot in the Red Keep. Cersei Lannister tries desperately to assert control over her father, trying to keep their Tyrell alliance from wavering as they look to rid themselves of Tyrion. The two sides agree to send some small armies to rush out. Forces led by Randall Tarley and Gregor Clegane rush out to terrorize the Riverlands, striking at small castles and villages. But their efforts are met with swift and brutal reprisals. Stannis' army meets these raids with iron discipline. Even his wildlings are brutally punished for any raiding of allied territory. The harshest fighting comes in the walls of Harrenhal, where Gregor makes his headquarters. The wildlings storm the castle, cutting down every foe in their path, losing themselves in battle lust. Their casualties are heavy, especially when Gregor himself joins the fray, barreling through the ranks on his massive destrayer. Mounted on his steed and clad in heavy armor, Gregor is practically unstoppable. That is, until he runs into the giant Woon. The mountain finds himself looking up and up and up, and for the first time in decades, he finds himself not the largest man in the room. There's a tense silence as the giant glares down at him. Then, without a word, he simply snatches him off his horse and tears him in half. The sight of the most feared knight in the Seven Kingdoms being ripped open like a fruit scares the rest of the garrison to surrender. Although a victory, The heavy casualties the wildlings suffer are a serious lesson to them. Things are different here. Ferocity and courage aren't enough like beyond the wall. Discipline and unity are just as important. Slowly, Stannis begins to mold them into a proper army, arming the wildlings with captured weapons and starting to train them in group tactics. But Stannis is not one to waste time on symbolic victories. Rather than marching directly for King's Landing, which still has the full Tyrell army, he sets his sights on the Westerlands, as per Davos's instruction, who saw how the Ironborn attack on Winterfell through Robb's conquest and chaos. The march into the Westerlands is swift and unrelenting. Stannis' army overruns villages and small fortifications, their banners casting long shadows over the once untouched lands of House Lannister. This time, Stannis is happy to let the wildlings loot and pillage to their heart's content, though he draws the line at harming the small folk. The wildlings and giants, now fully integrated into the army, prove invaluable. The wildlings' unconventional tactics and mastery at riding catches defenders off guard, while the giants smash through the gates and fortifications with terrifying ease. The Lannister forces rally under Tywin Lannister and Forley Prester, who muster their scattered armies. Tywin, a seasoned commander, relies on traditional Westerland tactics, disciplined infantry supported by heavy cavalry charges, but he is unprepared for the sheer ferocity of Stannis' assault. The battle is a slaughter. Stannis' disciplined southern infantry holds firm against the cavalry, while the wildlings flank the Lannister forces with guerrilla strikes. The giants, unfazed by arrows and pikes, smash through, creating gaps in their lines, while ranks of armored southerners and ferocious wildlings rush in. When the dust settles, Tywin and Forley are dead, and the Lannister host is scattered. Stannis wastes no time. With no major force to oppose him, he unleashes his army on the Westerlands, sacking towns and burning manors. Gold mines are seized, and supplies meant for King's Landing are either destroyed or commandeered. His biggest success comes with the capture of Lannisport. With Sir Gregor Clegane's death, Tyrion Lannister emerged victorious in his trial by combat, leaving him innocent. Although furious at this outcome, it at least frees Tywin Lannister the humiliation of executing his son, and frees him up to leave with the Lannister and Tyrell forces. With renewed vigor and a deep desire to crush the rebellion, Tywin marches into the Riverlands, his army joined by the Tyrell forces under Randyll Tarly, who maintains a small foothold in the Riverlands. The attack proves to be successful, as Janos Bracken and Lord Mooten prove unable to stop the Lannister advance and are beaten back, allowing them to make huge headway into their territory. Although Mark Piper and other River Lords launch hit-and-run attacks on them, but these do little to slow him down. Stannis Baratheon, who had systematically dismantled the Lannister power base in the Westerlands, is forced to redirect his attention. Tywin's approach threatens to undo his progress, and Stannis knows that to face the combined might of the Lannister-Tyrell host alone would be suicide. Instead, he dispatches letters to the north to Robb Stark, imploring him to march south and strike at Tywin's rear. In Winterfell, Robb Stark weighs the risk. The north has been hard won, and his alliance with Stannis has yet to be tested in the fires of battle. But the River Lords are his vassals as well, and to leave them now would to leave them to the slaughter. Reluctantly, Robb rallies his remaining bannermen and sails south with the fleet of Lord Waymon Manderly. Their target? Maidenpool, which was recently captured and serves as Tywin's supply base. What they weren't expecting was Lord Manderly's fleet, which was newly constructed and, for the first time in centuries, allowed the North to have strength at sea. The naval attack is a stunning success. Robb's forces strike like a shadow, cutting off key Lannister supply routes and forces Tywin to halt his advance. When Tywin prepares to march south, he finds the small northern army waiting for him behind the walls of Maidenpool. But at the top is Jaime Lannister, with a noose around his neck. This brings the attack to an abrupt halt as Robb offers terms. He will return Jaime and the remaining Lannister captives in exchange for all the captives taken by Tywin and for him to withdraw back to the Crownlands. These terms are unacceptable to Tywin. He cannot risk an attack. Even if Robb might be too honorable to kill Jaime, there are many River Lords and Northmen who thirst for revenge. Soon, a standoff develops, similar to the one Tywin faced so many years ago in Duskendale. While it doesn't fully stop the attacks, as Randyll Tarly and much of the army advance, it ties down many of the Lannister troops, giving the Riverlords some reprieve. Meanwhile, in the north, Jon Snow receives an unexpected visitor, Yara Greyjoy. She and her Ironborn warriors are quickly taken captive and brought before him. There she explains that her uncle, Euron Greyjoy, has won the Kingsmoot and now seeks to conquer Westeros. Euron, mad and unpredictable, has taken the majority of the Iron Fleet south to attack the Reach, leaving the Iron Islands vulnerable. Yara, desperate to reclaim her homeland and counter Euron's ambitions, implores Jon for aid. Unlike the rest of her family, Yara favors peace and is willing to join their coalition if he aids her. At first, Jon is skeptical. The Ironborn have caused no end of grief to the north, nearly bringing it to its knees. But Yara warns that this is just a taste of what is to come if Euron remains unchecked. News soon arrives of Euron's fleet devastating the Reach, pushing deep along the coastline. First, he takes the Shield Islands. Then he follows this success by raiding the entire coastline, burning entire towns to the ground, and even threatens Old Town. These are much larger than the northern fishing villages, and Jon Snow realizes that if he's allowed to return north, there will be no stopping him. Stannis Baratheon, ever pragmatic and single-minded, initially scoffs at the idea of diverting his forces to confront the Ironborn. Seated at his war table in Lannisport, he considers everything.
Let the Ironborn ravage the Reach. The Tyrells are no allies of mine, and their strength bleeds my enemies. Every village the Ironborn burn, every field they salt, weakens the Lannisters' position.
Many lords all shout their agreement, some even suggesting they join the raiding, knowing the wildlings will be hungry for loot. One lord, though, disagrees. Davos Seaworth.
Aye, your grace. But what of your cause? You're fighting to sit the Iron Throne, not just crush the Lannisters. The people of the Reach won't forget that you left them to their fate when the war is over. They'll remember a king who looked away as their lands burned.
Stannis narrows his eyes, but he does not interrupt.
Remember the Wall. When you answered their call, the North remembered. You turned them into allies. The wildlings now march with you, and their king is one of your bannermen. Robb Stark holds Tywin Lannister at bay in Maidenpool because you gave them justice. If you march to the Reach now, you can break the Ironborn and show the realm you're a king worth following. The Onion Knight is right. I don't speak for you Southerners, but free folk don't follow titles, or oaths, or kings. We follow deeds. And now is the time to consider deeds you want people to know you for. You would have me abandon the Westerlands to Tywin while I go to the Reach. Not abandon, your grace. Robb Stark has already proven his worth as a warrior. Ask him to keep Tywin occupied. Tell some of the Riverlords to return east and join his army. They can harry the Lannister army and delay their advance. Send word to Stark. He will hold Tywin's attention. Tell Lord Manderly and Salador Saan to sail south to the Reach. We will need their forces to beat the Ironborn back.
Stannis' army, hardened from their victories in the Westerlands, begins their march south, while Jason Mallister and Carl Vance return east with their troops. They spread word that they meant to fight Randyll Tarly and join the resistance. Edmure Tully joins forces with them and harries the Reach army while Tywin sends part of his army to reclaim Lannisport. Robb continues to fight in the siege of Maidenpool, launching sorties that force Tywin to remain where he was with large numbers of his army. The banners of the Fiery Heart and the Stag flutter against the autumn winds as his disciplined forces press the Riverlands. Stannis leaves behind a garrison to hold his Westerland gains, trusting Robb Stark to prevent Tywin from retaliating in force. Meanwhile, Salador Saan's fleet, bolstered by Lord Manderly's ships, slips quietly along the coastline, evading Euron's scouts. As the Ironborn rampages deeper into the Reach, their ships focus on ferrying loot and reinforcements, leaving the coastline increasingly undefended. Stannis arrives at the edge of the Reach to find chaos. Ironborn raiders, emboldened by their successes, have spread out to sack villages and destroy harvests. The Tyrells tried to rally their forces, but many of their lords remain out east, and without the strength at sea to challenge the Ironborn. Stannis strikes swiftly, driving the Ironborn back from their outposts with his disciplined infantry and devastating them with his superior cavalry. Though surprised to see him, Garland Tyrell is grateful for the help and escorts them to Old Town, where the fighting is thickest. Euron Greyjoy, confident in his dominance, has sent much of the Iron Fleet to Slaver's Bay. This means he only has the smaller longships with him when Stannis' fleet suddenly appears off the coast, and Euron's forces are caught entirely off guard. Manderly's heavy warships and Salador Sand's swift corsairs descend on the scattered Ironborn vessels, cutting them off from their retreat to the sea. On land, Stannis orchestrates a coordinated assault. His forces swarm around the city, beating back Ironborn ground forces. Mance Rayder leads his vanguard, the wildlings howling and matching the Ironborn's ferocity, fighting with equal parts savagery while their giants loom overhead, crashing through shield walls and even hurtling chunks of debris and boulders at the moored longships. Behind them, the southern heavy cavalry comes galloping forward, their lances down as they smash through the routing Ironborn. Euron himself, realizing the trap too late, attempts to rally his men, but Stannis' forces are relentless. The Ironborn leader is forced to retreat, leaving behind many of his captains and warriors to be slaughtered or captured. When he returns to the Iron Islands, he finds Yara and Jon Snow waiting for him, as Jon Snow gathered a handful of wildling and northern troops to stifle Yara's small fleet. Together they manage to land a force on Pike and capture it, overwhelming Euron's leftover defenders. With this success, the Reach truly falters, as they see it was Stannis, not Tywin, who kept their people safe in this time of crisis. Many Reach lords begin to rush towards Stannis' side, forcing the Tyrells to renounce their alliance. Meanwhile, Tywin's position was severely weakened, and the Westerlands were left devastated. Seeing how bad their position is, Mace opens the gates of King's Landing, allowing Stannis and the Baratheons to capture it. The Lannister family is all soon captured and executed, but this does not save Mace, as Stannis strips him of his title and names Garland Tyrell as the new Lord of Highgarden, for he was the one who helped save the Reach. Yara, meanwhile, concludes a peace with the North, allowing them to finally end the War of the Five Kings. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.